Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Saturday, March 6th, Kojicon. We have 2 more days to go. So we are so glad to be back again today with our next presenters. I'm really excited about this one because there was so many people who came together to make Kojicon happen, from the presenters who joined us to Rich and Jeremy, who curated the content, to my team here, who was supporting with various aspects of registration, and then of course the design, which really pulled it all together. And so to have Claudia and Max join us and talk about their work, I think is going to be really interesting, not just to hear about the idea in terms of Kojicon, but to think about it, for those of you out there building your own brands or thinking about how to present on social media and elsewhere. So let me introduce our speakers and then I'll bring them in. So Claudia Mack is joining us. She's a designer and photographer. She's working freelance now primarily, but prior to that was managing social media and was photographer for chef Stephanie Izard. I know I'm saying that wrong, I just realized. And then Max Hull is a chef and illustrator. He's worked as an instructor. He's a self-taught visual artist and now working as an illustrator as well. So let me bring both of them onto the screen, as well as Rich Shee. Hello there. Rich, you all know, of course, is the author of Koji Alchemy and mastermind behind Kojicon. Rich, I'm going to go ahead and exactly. I'm going to pop out and let you take over, and I'll be back here if you need anything.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jen. So awesome to have Max and Claudia with us today. I think one of the things that I feel that is important about this entire landscape of what we're working on is that we sort of understand all the pieces that are involved in terms of like everything, that all these little pieces of what everybody's doing that contributes to the entire conversation. And I think one of the things that we often forget about is what's going on behind the scenes and what makes something really tick, what makes something really intriguing and engaging. And I think it was one of those things that I felt was important to bring to the conference to talk about, because often we just look at sort of a website or some social media content or some logos, and we find it to be something that helps with understanding and being engaged, but we don't really think about everything that's involved to make that happen. And it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of creativity and thought. And we wanted to bring in Claudia and Max to talk about sort of how we got to this point and the importance of being able to have a good relationship with your designer and understanding how to express what your vision is and how they can make it into these beautiful pieces that surrounds everything, such that it makes the experience that much better than if you just showed up on the screen and just started talking. And it makes it more well-rounded, and it makes it really it makes it so that you're connected. And I think that's the key piece of all of what we're doing is being connected to each other. And if we can present it in a very pleasing and engaging way, it's a wonderful thing to do. So I put together, so Max and Claudia, let me allow you to sort of introduce yourselves and who you are, and maybe say a little bit about where we're at with this sort of relationship.
Yeah, totally. So I'm Claudia. I helped put together the design for Kojicon with Max's help. He's my fiance and design partner in crime, I guess. We've been all connected together for quite a few years now, working on various creative projects. As everyone knows, Rich is a very generous and wonderful person and really good at collecting a community around an idea. And so it's a real privilege to be able to use our talents outside of food, which is the medium that we met in, to help really define that like creatively through design, illustration, and photography. We have a really nice relationship with Rich in that way.
Yeah. So I'm Max, and Rich and I first met through food, of course, when I was the chef of a food truck come restaurant in Boston called May May.
We can have Jen start the slides if we want to just kind of work through them.
That makes sense. Hey.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, so this is the food truck. And yeah, one of the things I've always admired about Rich is his ability to just like reach out to people and forge relationships, no matter like how intimidating that person might seem. Like I remember when I first started interacting with Rich, man, about a decade ago now.
Oh my God.
Yeah, time flies. He would tell me about like chefs that I idolized, that he was just like, oh, I had a Twitter conversation with this person the other day, and I was like, what, you just tweeted this person?
Yeah.
And that I think has been the main reason that we're all still like so connected now, is because of Rich's insistence that like, this is important, like these relationships are important, and I think I've actually learned a lot about that from him.
Yeah, and I think early on I just had so much enthusiasm for what you guys were doing with the food truck and bringing this like really thoughtful cuisine and with this vehicle of young people with so much energy that could do anything that they wanted. And like I was so intrigued, and also I had no idea what it took to do things in the back of the house or even the front of the house. And I just remember showing up pretty close to the first day you guys were in the brick and mortar space of May May, and I just started putting some shelving together, and Andy was like kind of looking at me like weird, like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm just helping. And it was just sort of this awesome relationship that I would stop by, like I remember I was stopping by like once a week just to like, do some prep work and just like bounce ideas about things, and just to learn. And I had no clue what it took. And I think the one thing that I really recognized from, visiting kitchens of like that you guys were at, or other kitchen is that whenever I would show up, people were so welcoming, in terms of, what I was looking to do is understand more and just to be able to be engaged in that community where people are working so hard together, and so focused on a purpose of being able to put smiles on people's faces through hospitality and feeding them, made me feel like home. It made me feel like I was part of a family. And I just remember when I was able to, do these awesome things that I would have never thought of without having this experience and understanding what it really meant to make food in this way that was, I don't know, different from just cooking at home, and with these expectations of being able to execute on a level that you don't know who's coming into your kitchen and who's going to say what, and being able to just forge past these, like very sort of harsh criticism at times when you've worked so hard to put something delicious on a plate and somebody will dismiss it because it's not something that they necessarily understand or were expecting.
Right.
And very few times, like I can't think of any time actually that I would, there wasn't ever any question of the quality. And I was just like, to me, that was sort of like, why aren't people thinking more about what it takes to make a meal or what it takes to do these things? And that's the one thing that I recognized once I started, working in kitchens and understanding more, is that people need to really think about what it takes. And it's not as simple as, what you do at home to make, a meal for your family. Right. And I think a lot of people think that it's easy, and it's far from that. So that's sort of what enlightened me and sort of sparked this flame to understand more about people making food, because it's these sort of when people have the drive to make food, they are people who are multifaceted in their experience and their abilities. And I think this is sort of a small glimpse into that, what you guys have done beyond your time in the kitchen. And that's the piece that I want to bring to it, in terms of allowing you to tell your story.
Awesome.
Yeah, totally.
So, so the other piece there is an interesting thing, is that there was one point in time when the folks at Maymay were always really busy and trying to do things, and I always wanted to experiment and try different things. So it was kind of a weird circumstance. So they usually just shoved me in the corner and gave me some things to do, and then I would come up with these different makes that I would have people taste, and it was really fun. But one thing that I was able to do is I was really excited about the Searsall, which is Dave Arnold's invention, to be able to evenly distribute heat by using a torch. Plus, it helps with not getting this torch taste. But anyways, I was playing with it, and I had this idea that you could easily caramelize sugar. And then one thing that I did was I took malted milk powder and I put it around gingerbread, and I flamed it, and it became this hot, gooey, crusty, really complex flavor. So one of the things that I was ultimately able to do was able to serve Dave Arnold, when he was in town, this cool dessert with these gooey cake slugs that I made. It doesn't sound pleasing in terms of the way I describe it, but it's really delicious. But it's things like this that you get the opportunity to hang out with people in the kitchens and see what they do, and then you're able to try new things you've never thought you'd do before, and that's what Maymay allowed me to do.
Yeah, I think your emphasis on putting community and inspiration and knowledge gathering ahead of everything else really helped this become more than just Rich is some guy that comes and helps out once a week at Maymay, and really took it into the future. So I think if we flip to the next slide, we have some examples. So a couple of the Instagram posts there are from when Rich came to visit me at Little Moss, a restaurant in South Dartmouth, Massachusetts, after I had left Maymay. And so this was years after we first started, hanging out and exchanging ideas and everything. And it was so cool to be able to bring him into the kitchen that I had moved to after Maymay, and to show him how my cuisine was changing, and to get new ideas from him. And Little Moss has a very nice kitchen with a lot of gadgets. So it was fun to watch Rich play around with some stuff that maybe he didn't get to use very often.
Absolutely, it was a lot of fun. And Ricky making that gnocchi, oh my god, that was mind blowing. How fast he could cut that gnocchi, I was
crazy.
Yeah, and you took a video and you're yeah, this is regular speed.
Right. Yeah.
No, that's unbelievable. But so the other thing that's there is Max illustrations on the Maymay chalkboard, and I remember that because I was so engaged with the way the fish were drawn, so perfectly, they're alive. That I think that was the moment that I wanted to have you illustrate things. I didn't know in what context. So
Yeah.
that was the moment that sold me that you should you should do illustrations for Koji Alchemy. And that was it. I mean, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I was like, I don't understand. You're like a really amazing chef, and then you can also do these things. Like I can't draw worth crap. So I was intrigued by, your, like I said, the multifaceted talents of people who work in a kitchen, just because they're able to, you have to create something that excites all of the senses when people eat food. And to do that, you really need to be engaged in so many things, so many ways of understanding.
True.
And the fact that these folks in the kitchen, they also have these other talents that people have no idea about, because it's just another outlet of creativity.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that was what was super cool about Maymay too. Everyone who was there, like you said earlier, was so enthusiastic and energetic about food, but everyone also had all these like hidden superpowers. Like what was Emily, like went to MIT?
Oh yeah, she left her PhD program at MIT to start working on the food truck at Maymay.
Yeah. Yeah, my friend who I met at Maymay is like now a food scientist for Boston Beer Company. Like these people are just like incredibly intellectual and talented, and it was just such a nice space to feel inspired and supported by other people. I don't know if I've ever had that like in another job or at school. And that just like speaks to why we're all still close and like why I love Max so much, like these relationships are lifelong, and I really credit it a lot to that space. Like, cool.
Yeah, somebody just commented on your shirt, Max.
Oh, yeah. I was going to mention that too, actually. Yeah. Another small world moment.
That's a great segue.
Yeah.
Museum of Food and Drink shirt.
Yeah. So Dave Arnold basically was he was the person who had the idea to start the Museum of Food and Drink. So we're both very excited about what they're doing, and I ended up, doing a lot of work for them in terms of for their exhibits, and they're doing wonderful work. So if you have an opportunity, definitely check them out. You can see them on Instagram at MoFad. They're doing amazing work, especially in the virtual space right now with the African American community and visibility there. So definitely check out their exhibits and their talks. It's really, I don't know, unbelievable. So I think we can move to the next slide.
Yeah, sure.
So this is the relationship I have with Claudia. I'll let her walk through it in terms of like what we have here.
Yeah. So I was a server at Maymay. I did a bit of everything, honestly. Grilling and frying on the food truck sometimes. I wore many hats. And so I met Rich there. He would just like show up, as he said, and make delicious food and let us all try it. And I think that, like his enthusiasm is obviously extremely infectious. And so I was happy to kind of like show him like, hey, I'm a designer. I'm a photographer too. After Maymay, I worked at a branded food publication, just kind of like learning the ropes of photography and design. And so Rich was really awesome to show up one day at like a photography workshop that I was doing at NESOP, the New England School of Photography. And he brought all of these extremely cool ferments and other experiments with him. And so we took over like the studio space, and it was a bit odd because there were other students in their own studios like doing their stuff, but I was able to like get an outsider in, and Rich was obviously like super engaging. I know that my instructor like ended up following him on Instagram like immediately afterwards because we were all having like just a blast and like conversing the whole time about the project. But I actually shot this like miso cheese that Rich made. And yesterday I found out it was on the Taiwanese edition of Kojicon, which is so cool.
Yeah, I had no idea that was going to happen.
Yeah.
So, Yeah, I mean, we heard that it was happening, and then all of a sudden, Jeremy sent me a link. He's like, "Hey, man, we're in Taiwan." I'm like, "Oh my god!" Because yeah, I mean, that's my heritage. That's where my parents are from. So this whole sort of whole full circle thing is pretty amazing. And to see that Claudia's work was on the cover when we had actually talked about potentially having it on the original cover was really sort of icing on the cake for that particular publication. So, but yeah, I can't even describe how amazing that is and how that all worked out. And especially like right before our talk, I was like, we have to put in the talk now.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it was like a huge surprise for me too, and I'm so happy. When I posted it earlier, I was like remarking on how this time in my life is like learning photography and like really getting my like feet wet in that kind of profession. Like Rich being able to like bring all of these super cool looking things to like my class. He really went like above and beyond to support me in my journey in that way. Like other students didn't have like chef friends who were making cool ferments that they could shoot. And I think that like that really speaks to Rich's support as a friend outside of food. Just like having the opportunity to work with him on so many cool things. It feels really good to be his point person for if he needs a cool photo or some design work.
Well, I mean, it's also both sides of it too. It's just you taught me so much about design and imagery and how to make things look beautiful, and you were so generous with your time. I mean, if I had to, if I had to like sort of, I guess, if I had to pay somebody to do this work, it would just be difficult, especially in the place that we are in with our efforts, and to be able to have a relationship where we can both offer things to each other and nurture each other in these ways. I feel that's a much better relationship than a financial relationship. And I think these are the types of things that we want to sort of do moving forward and try to figure out how to do them such that people can, make whatever you want to call a living, like just to be able to, have a place to rest your head and have food on your table, and have things that you want to pursue in terms of, whatever it is you want, that fulfills your soul, your passion. So however we can get there, I hope it's different from just being able to give somebody some money for what their work is worth, because it's way beyond that.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I agree. And I think that like it is a transactional nature sometimes, like photography, like studio and client kind of relationship can also like kind of hinder the creativity and positivity around generating something really cool. And I think that, just you also like volunteering your time to me, like it's a very well-intentioned and like fun relationship to make beautiful things with somebody who's so open-minded. Yeah, and I also
thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. I wanted to speak to the fact that I also got Manresa bread out of this.
Oh, well, that's
Yeah, it wasn't totally not transactional.
Yeah, that was funny because Max wasn't around.
Yeah, I know. So I got to rub it in his face.
Oh yeah.
It really wasn't that good.
Yeah, it wasn't that good. Don't worry, you didn't miss out on much.
I'll tell David he said so.
Yeah.
Should we move to the next slide?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So here, well, I'll let Max take this away. This is your work, man.
Yeah, sure. So Rich approached me a couple of years ago when Koji Alchemy was sort of definitely going to be a real thing, but was still sort of in the preliminary stages. And he knew that he wanted illustrations, and he had me in mind, thankfully. And I was in a point in my life where I was sort of taking a step back from the fine dining world, so I had a little bit more free time, which is to say any free time at all. And so I was really excited to have the opportunity to work on something. I had never done illustration professionally before, so it was such an exciting opportunity for me. And so yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about these sketches. So the ones in pencil on either side are sketches that I did originally just in a couple of days to show the Chelsea Green, just to like sort of get their okay to be like, sure, he can do sketches. And the others are more once Rich had like specific ideas in mind, he gave me some reference images and talked to me about a little bit about what he wanted. And so these, I think I put together, there were 30, I think, in total, sketches in a couple of months. And I was like, oh, I got to make these sketches good so that they hire me to do the real illustrations for the book. And Rich was like, just don't worry about it. I got your back.
Yeah.
But what I think is really interesting about these sketches, if you flip to the next slide, some of them we got right off the bat, like we pretty much knew exactly what we wanted to do, so they didn't change very much. The Canidia 4 and this incubator and the rice grain anatomy drawing were pretty straightforward, but others, if you flip to the next slide, took some finagling. So in the top left corner is the first, actually, I think it's technically the second or even third version of trying to show what the what the spacing should be, or like what the aeration should be for different grains when you're preparing them to inoculate them with koji. And we went through, we had like, it feels like 10 phone conversations about like how exactly to get this to work. And so it went through that first iteration, and then the one below it was another stab, and then it became this sort of almost comic looking 4-panel design in the final, which I think works really well.
Yeah.
Similarly with the other incubator that's pictured to the right there. The first one was like trying to show all of the components at once with kind of a complex cutout design. And then we figured out to make it more clear, just do a couple of illustrations focusing on different aspects. And I think working with Rich in that way was valuable for me as a professional, and also valuable for Rich in terms of learning how to communicate with me, because I remember he said, yeah, you know, I learned that you do best with like really specific instructions. Like, oh, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. And I think the central image in terms of like the spacing of the grains, I think it really helped when I did a picture of them all together at the same scale, because I think that was really helpful. And yeah, I mean, in terms of the sketches, the illustrations on the right with the incubator, you know, I see this sort of stuff all the time in mechanical engineering, and I think being able to describe to you what that means, you were able to do it very well. And in a sense, it's very you know, modernist cuisine in terms of their cross-sectional views. So, right. And I know that obviously they have a you know, a technological and engineering background, but
right.
Yeah, I was super stoked when you showed me those for like the nth time. that they worked out really great, and I think they really help with understanding. So
yeah. All right, and then so after the sketches, I got to I landed the job, and I was able to do the final illustrations as well. So I think we can move on to the next slide. And so yeah, we'll just roll through some selections of final illustrations from the book. The steaming rice is sort of in my mind, the kind of the flagship illustration of the bunch.
Yeah.
And the one thing that's interesting about it is this sort of stylized steam, which speaks to part of what Rich had wanted from the beginning, was to have this sort of modern-ish, but also kind of ancient-seeming Leonardo da Vinci style drawing. And so I went through a bunch of his sketches, and this sort of like very curly way of depicting flow is seen in a lot of his different drawings. So I tried to bring that in there. Also the other illustration is of pickled fish. And I thought this would be a fun bonus, right? Because this version of the illustration actually does not appear in the book. Once we were almost to the end, Rich was like, "Hey, is there any way to get rid of all of the like chilies and onions and mustard seeds and stuff on the pickled fish?" And so I ended up not totally redrawing it, but sort of touching it up and taking those things out. So, but I really like the way it looks like this. So I'm to include. They're both excellent, is what I'll say.
Yeah, I can't argue that, but it was for the fish sauce section.
Right.
You don't add that stuff. So.
Right. Yeah. Makes total sense. Just, I just love looking at that chili on there. It's just so nice. All right. I think we can move to the next slide. Pretty straightforward. Some just a sake set. It's a dried daikon kojizuke, I believe, and then a cutout of the process for compressing and like getting the initial sort of brining step done on daikon pickles, right?
Yep, that's right.
All right, next slide. Oh, these were some fun ones. So on the left is sort of a botanical drawing of rice. I really enjoyed doing that one. I think it came out really nice. And then these were two more that Rich and I worked really closely on because Rich had something very specific that he wanted them to convey. And I have worked with Koji a little bit, but I haven't done a lot of the more nitty-gritty stuff, and I've never like cultured my own from scratch. So I was relying a lot on his description of things to guide me through these more technical drawing aspects of it. And I don't know, Rich, if you want to speak to this at all. But...
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what we wanted to convey with the images in the center is just the coating application of marinating versus the more long-term applications of making an amino paste and how they interrelate of the sort of dispersion of protein relative to your koji. So I wanted to be able to tell the story that if you're doing a shorter term application to a piece of protein, that you would have sort of this the surface ratio was very different in terms of you'd have a lot more protein relative to your marinade or your koji, whereas when you have a miso type application, it's more equally and blended and evenly distributed with each other. So it's the enzymatic action on that. And then the image on the right was just to be able to display how Jeremy uses this method of making koji in trays, and he covers his trays. So we were able to display a cross section of what the grain bed or the substrate looks like, and how it's covered with plastic wrap with some holes, and there are also some like sort of arrows of like how things are circulating that aren't in this image, but they are in the book. So right. To be able to give people insight into like the specifics of how things work was was the engine behind these images, and to be able to have people get an understanding through this sort of lens.
Awesome. All right, we can move to the next slide. Yeah. Oh, so I had a lot of fun doing the different molecular drawings because Rich's instruction was basically do whatever you think looks good.
It's like the best feedback you could get as a creator.
Right. I was worried about, like, I don't know if they needed to be like accurate, like whatever that means in terms of molecular drawings. I think the high uncertainty principle comes into play, but so I tried to get, like, relative sizes of atoms right and everything, and he's just like, don't worry about it. Just get the structure. It's gonna be fine. So I had some fun, like, messing around with the textures and dimensionality of that. And then the Meiju blocks were one of the first things that I had sketched way back when the project first started. And it was really nice to be able to do a final version of those, and I think they came out really well.
Yeah. You'll have to make some now.
That's right. That's right. And then, Rich, the wooden trays, those are actually made by someone right?
So those are the trays at South River Miso. I don't know who made them, but I think it was cool to be able to include their inspiration in the book, because they've been I don't know, they making miso longer than I don't know how long it's been, longer than I've known anything about koji, and years before that. So they've been producing some really cool stuff. So if anybody ever has the opportunity, they're in the marketplace, and taste their stuff, and they're in a lot of regional Whole Foods. I'm not sure where else they are beyond, I guess, New England.
And I think there's one more slide of illustrations. Oh no, that's it. Yeah. So,
is that Max?
Yeah. Exactly.
Chef's kiss.
So this is just a little. I thought it would be fun to end on. The first time I ever opened a book that had been published by a real publisher that had something I drew in it. It was a pretty magical moment.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was great.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks so much for letting me share about the illustrations. I think we can move on to design.
Yeah,
totally. So we were approached by Rich and Jen to do the branding for this amazing virtual conference called Kojicon, wherever it is right now. And we were really excited because we were both in a spot where we could start to collaborate together because we had so much time. And it has been really nice to foster this relationship, especially from two people in different creative disciplines. So I had worked at a brand agency in Chicago, mostly doing like CPG work for like Kellogg's and Mars. But there I really became acquainted with the process of brand building. And I know that Max has such like supreme aesthetic ability and taste, at least from where I'm standing.
Thank you.
That it's really nice to be able to have the chance to kind of converge those knowledge bases together. And so this is like another example of Rich handing us a project that like really speaks to our strengths and, like speaks to how much we like to work together. And so if you go to the next slide, I can kind of talk about the process of building Kojicon from a brand perspective. And then I'll go through like the logos we drafted and how it all came to be. But the first step of building a brand is really trying to gather some inspiration. And so Kojicon was this like really like nascent and cool idea. And we spoke to Jen and Rich in kind of a kickoff meeting to learn a bit more about the format and it was just amazing. Like it really felt like a culmination of all of the things that Rich had been working toward. And so because we're a friend of his, like we really know about his ethos. And so in the idea for the branding, we wanted it to really feel sharp and professional so that it represented all of the experts that he was bringing together. But at the end of the day, like we all like to have fun, and Koji is a very exciting topic that is able to connect people from all over the world, even virtually. And so we wanted the branding to feel sharp, but also have a hint of fun to really represent that like passion behind fermentation. And so the things that I pulled here are just like small clips or like screenshots of branding, mostly to do with conferences and museum exhibitions, which I felt were like really contemporary and modern spaces. But also the iconography here that I've shown really like represents togetherness, and like the D has the different like molecules all coming together, which I thought was a good jumping off point for Koji and what we wanted to represent. So if you go to the next slide, we often get to see like the pretty final logo on things, but never do we get to see like all of the dead ideas left behind it. And so we had worked on other projects related to Koji with Rich, so we knew that the word like really locked up nicely rectangularly, and we tried a few iterations where it was like written in this like super modern font, but we felt like it wasn't really accessible or legible, especially in the context that we were promoting Kojicon, because it's a virtual conference promoted mainly digitally. And so we kind of ditched that idea, and then we went into these more like very like museum exhibition ideas where we could put the dates and like the tagline, but it still felt really uptight. Like we were really drawn to the font, but it still like didn't have that like feeling of togetherness that we really were trying to convey. And so we started, I think maybe like this was a shower idea or something. We got to take a logo and then like break it apart. And so I started to just like move the letters around a bit. And I found that a bit of the flow could like really show, you know, like fun and dynamism. And so I felt like the C and the J would make a really good link to represent togetherness. And so I can't tell you how much we like looked in detail at connecting this J and C.
Oh my God.
Max and I sketched it a million times in different ways. We tried to connect it to the O, but it's like these things that you maybe don't notice necessarily. And like when you look at a logo, there's like a lot of you know, attention to the little details, because we really felt like that little movement could really show a lot. And so it was very important to us to have it in there, which brings us to the next slide. Which is the final logo, which I'm sure everyone is very familiar with at this point. But we found this like perfect geometric balance where we could have the J and C connect, add a bit of a cool graphic element that Max will talk about a little bit later into the logo, have it be legible, and then also be able to house the information in a way that it could be removed or added, no matter what you wanted to convey. And so this flexibility was really key, because it was, you know, like portrayed digitally, but also because it's a conference. So sometimes you want to have a tagline, and sometimes you want to have the dateline, but sometimes you just want the brand, bare bones. And so if we move on, Max can talk a bit about his graphic elements here.
Yeah, so while Claudia was working her magic with the text, this was my understanding. We knew we wanted at least one graphic element for the brand. And so the obvious thing with anything Koji related, the most like iconic thing would be the Canidia-4. So I wanted to do something with that, but I didn't want it to be so like clinical, you know, stuff like that can come off very cold sometimes. So I wanted it to be stylized, and you could recognize it as a Canidia-4 if you knew that's what it was. but it wouldn't necessarily like trigger that automatically. So I went with, I ended up creating this sort of dandelion seed head looking thing that could be exploded out, which you see next to it. And I wanted to stylize the koji spores themselves as little seeds, right? And my thinking here is essentially that you can view it in two different ways, right? It sort of represents coming together and community, which echoes not only Rich's kind of personal brand and ethos, but also it's the entire idea of a conference, right? Or a convention. People coming together, sharing knowledge, and then that knowledge gets dispersed, which you can read the more exploded one as like people's knowledge being dispersed in that way. So it's a very simple design, but I think it's nice because it has, you know, multiple interpretations and a couple of different layers of significance that really makes it relate to the brand and the ideas that the brand is trying to convey.
Yeah. If we move on to the next slide, we kind of see it all come together. So these are our brand guidelines that we handed off to Rich and Jen to take to build the social media profile as well as the website. And so this is really like the ultimate culmination of a brand, at least in this context. You have like different logo lockups, of course, the graphic elements and how those are used. You define some colors that we think work well. In this instance, we felt like they were super vibrant and looked so nice on social media. And so because that was our primary medium, we went with these. We also defined some type styles, which was really cool, really like bold and legible type. We also came up with this like duotone photo treatment just as a way to, we knew we'd get a diverse amount of headshots in and photography. And so to keep it all branded and make it really recognizable when you're scrolling through your social media, we wanted to use this blue duotone from the brand colors. And yeah, we're really happy with how it turned out. I think working with Rich and Jen was critical and amazing throughout the entire process. They really let us do like what we thought would look good and supported us along the way. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this a bit more.
Yeah, thank you for building such a beautiful brand. And and if we'd love to have Jen come up and say some words about the branding and her experience for anybody who's interested in doing work with you.
Yeah, no, it was, I love hearing how it all came to be because, well, a couple of things resonate with me. So our logo for the Yellow Farmhouse is a dandelion, which I can sort of see behind me here. But we did that. We loved the idea of a dandelion, like the seed head being like this really nostalgic piece, that dandelion is an often misunderstood plant. So we're hoping to sort of reframe the conversation about food and get people to connect in a different way and appreciate things that maybe they didn't otherwise appreciate. And so I love that icon is similar to a dandelion. That spoke to me for sure. But I also love that you designed it so specifically for social media, which I think is like, anybody who's sort of building a brand for a product out there, it's so helpful. And especially even as I was then using all of the elements that you gave me to design the website and to do the screenshots for the live streams. And then for Rich and I to be doing everything that we were posting on social media, it was just so helpful to have that as part of the thought. So we didn't have to like recrop or repurpose something. So that was so helpful. And the consistency of being able to just sort of like pull elements as like a non-designer using things like Canva and Squarespace to like kind of make it all look, of a piece was, all the elements were so helpful.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. I think all of it in execution really came together so well. And it's awesome. It's just a great opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody has any questions out there. I mean, people were certainly commenting on wondering what that icon was, but that it really was representing like these seeds of knowledge. And then also just the idea, this kind of keeps coming up. I mean, it's just like a recurring theme throughout, this idea that, creativity in whatever way that you're using it, like you need to be cross-pollinating with other people who are also creative.
Yeah.
Results are fascinating. And, Rich, your conversation earlier with, I'm just totally blanked on the name of the guy who did all the charts.
Matthew Claudel.
Matthew. I was going to say Max. And I was like, no, this is Max. Matthew, right. That was just so interesting to hear how that kind of came together. And it just keeps coming up as these sort of intersection between different career paths, but all people who are super creative and curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Yeah,
This is awesome to be able to share this, this relationship and all that we've been working on together with everybody. And to give people an appreciation for what happens behind the scenes and all the work that's involved. And just thankful that when you have good people doing such things that you don't really need to worry about. The goal in sort of, these contexts is you want to focus on the things that you're sort of tasked to do and not, all of these other things that aren't really about what you're trying to do, but they're absolutely essential. Yeah. When you can find the right people, it just makes it so easy to have things tick. I mean, we as all of us know, it's like we don't have a huge crew to like run this conference. A lot of it has been like thankfully championed by Jen, like with all of your hard work. And it's just like we couldn't have done it without, these essential pieces of people working so hard and being and having like knowledge and the talent just to like jump in and just get things done and no nonsense. And
yeah, and Rich, I think that's an important point. I mean, it's a tiny team working on this, on all parts of it. But one of the things I think was really helpful at the beginning was when you and I really thought about like where to allocate our resources, the limited resources we had at the start of this. And one was certainly on our speakers and making sure people were being properly compensated for their expertise. And also, we made a decision to pay for the design piece of it because it was so important to be able to, this was something new. So we wanted people to be able to see it and know exactly what it was. And then anytime they saw something similar, that was an important part of it. And I was glad, as people are out there maybe thinking about their own work, where you can allocate your resources and where you can decide when somebody else's expertise is really important to bring in. And I think the design of this was an important one.
Yeah, absolutely. And and we would highly recommend Max and Claudia to do work for others in this realm. So
I know, this is one more thing. Sorry, I forgot that.
Oh yeah, one more thing. I had, Max and Claudia ahead of the conference. I think this project has been going on like off and on for like years, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
We basically wanted to we wanted to be able to, put a logo together that matches the intent of Koji Builds community as everybody understands it as, this communal space in a virtual world where people come together and share ideas about Koji. So this is a culmination of that in terms of being able to have something for people that they can put on and feel and show their enthusiasm. So we're going to be putting the t-shirt on the website, and all proceeds are going to go towards future efforts for things of this nature of people working together to understand more and for future Kojicon events or educational things. So I don't know. Did you guys want to talk a little bit about the logo or just?
Yeah, I mean, so from my this was my first chance at stylizing a Canidia for a Koji brand. So I'm an expert on that.
But now it's so applicable because look at how many people are working with Koji.
Yeah,
right.
totally.
Yeah, I think so. This logo speaks to a desire to be like as accessible as possible, which is why there's more emphasis placed on legibility, and sort of this logo is a little bit more straightforward than the Kojicon logo for that reason.
Yeah, it's definitely like a more mass or broad appeal, and plus the real like message that we're trying to get across is Koji building community. So we wanted it to be very clear and bold, and we love these colors that we ended up with. But we also had tried many different colors, and I think that's what's cool about it. Like it looks good in about any other like color combination, though we are happy with where it ended up. So maybe in the future might see some other iterations floating about.
Who knows?
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll be putting it up on the website shortly and making an announcement through the Kojicon channel so people can buy a T-shirt, support what we're doing, and we're here to help. And so yeah, so I leave it to Max and Claudia to close it out and tell people how they can get in touch with you and do work with you.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, if you ever want to talk about like all of the things that we're involved in, which is anywhere from food to photography, we do design and illustration work together. You can visit our websites to see that respective work at maxjhull.com or cmac.design. You can also find us on Instagram at those handles. And then you can also email us. There are contact buttons and forms on both of our websites, and we'd be happy to collaborate.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It really has been such a pleasure, and it's been really fun to work with your designs. So I hope others get to do the same.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.